Good evening or good day, ladies and gentlemen. In England, where I am, it's a beautiful sunny day. The subject matter today is about buying low and selling high, which are the universal principles of commerce. That much is you already know. Applying that, putting that into practice, is a process of discipline. Most people, what we have commonly now come to understand as being human, as to opposed to mankind or man being also the species, that is a lot more challenging. Although I will be going through the graph of buying low and selling high, what the actual mechanisms are, albeit about 25% of the mechanism, which is known as the foundation. Everything else, of course, comes with experience. Although I will be speaking about Bitcoin today and the opportunities that are essentially waiting for you to partake in, I will be speaking about also first-hand knowledge. That is to say, those things which I do, okay? Because I'm not going to be talking about what other people do. That I do not have control over. But the experiences that I have and the things that I do to do and have some success. And sorry about sometimes the listing of words. I tend to get very excited, okay? And at the same time, partly frustrated that to think, have I got the message across? As you know, most things require a paradigm in order to view these things or view the opportunities in the correct format. And most people are unable to create paradigms to be able to create those perspectives. Without the perspective, they can never see things at different angles, let alone, like all of you subscribers, that's why you're listening to me, that have that wonderful panoramic vision of how your world works. Full stop. Let's go on to the actual mechanisms of what you're looking at, okay? So this is the chart that I'll be using, and I've made a nice big cursor so everybody understands the principles of what I'm talking about. And it is courtesy of CoinDesk, okay? Their live online service, as it were. And I'm using this as fair market value or fair market usage. So here you see a lifetime expanse, as the chart is, of how Bitcoin has behaved day on day. The chart itself, of course, because it's condensed, will not be able to give you the day-and-day performance, which you can do yourself, but what it does is gives you the lifetime performance. So in terms of month-by-month visual effect of how this chart is moving or how Bitcoin is moving, is for you to see panoramically. And that is something that is very important, which I want to drum in with you. The more knowledge or rudimentary principal knowledge, foundational knowledge, which are all the same thing, the more of it that you have, the more foundation you have, the more principles you have, the more the panoramic vision you have. Without this panoramic vision, your ability to make decisions is grossly limited. Okay? This is why your education system puts you in a very disadvantaged position to not to be able to have that panoramic vision. So it positions you, the education system, so you don't acquire the panoramic vision, or let alone the foundations to be able to create that in your life. You, as my subscribers, understand this very well. But the rest of society that have an incredible influential, if that's a correct word, an influence on stock market is also what we're going to be tackling in. So it's going to get a lot more dynamic. So this conversation that I'm having with you is me preparing you for this. All right? Because you need the foundations of human behavior, charts, reading charts, etc. That is that. So let's have a look at the chart itself. I'm going to be using very classical language here, language that your forefathers understood, your grandfathers understood, and you yourself must understand without the convolution. That's the convoluting of words. There is only one thing you need to do in whatever you do for the purposes of making money. Buy low, sell high. Period. You can see the only bit that's going to be concerning you and me is going to be these two highs. I'm not going to use colorful language to describe them like troughs or anything like that, okay? I'm just going to do the visuals to speak for themselves. The visions, the visual charts will speak for themselves. These are the highs. You know that. These are the lows. You know that. Where you or your baseline is between the lowest and the highest. Okay, so that's one baseline here. That is one baseline. The true value of the Bitcoin in terms of averages is around about here. Okay, that's what it is. That's the actual true market value. This is the averaging of what the people and the markets are telling you. Not this, and it's not this. So, if you are pessimistic, which I encourage you to be, then understand the lows of a market, the lows of a performance, which is found here. Avoid calling it troughs. These types of colloquialism, where finance is concerned, are there to color the law and the language, so you will misunderstand when it comes to true decision making. Okay? See it for what it is. That's the low and that's the high. Okay? Period. Make this your baseline. All right? So from this point here and this point here are the only 2 points that is of interest to me. Okay, these are the lows, the dips, and compared to that. So in comparison to what it was doing, say a year ago or so, or half a year ago, to what it is at the moment, is where your difference is. And you can see that there is an increase. Just as if you looked at the chart here when you was able to buy Bitcoin for like $1, I think it was, or less, or even more, or even $10, which was all round here. These are the universal learning curves, which I'll speak about later. Your concern will be, this is the lowest point that it's gone while it's at the Twin Towers, which is not colloquialism. You'll see these things. This is your Twin Tower. All right? This high represents how much faith the high points, how much faith the public has had in Bitcoin as to opposed to the empty fiat currency, which nobody knows the accountability of. All central banks have no accountability as to how much even money there is in circulation or how much money they've actually printed. They don't need to tell you. You understand? They only may tell you what they've released into the public, but not into the private. Because that which is from a private bank like the Federal Reserve into another hands of a private man or a woman or a private corporation is private and not open to public disclosure, as it were. You understand this. This is the beginning of how disabled the people out there are. You know, it's all very well for you, the subscribers that are listening to me, because you have like a 5-6 year ahead start of the general public. But it's the general public's performance that also determines so many of the reactionary position. These to me will tell you how high something historically can go. If it can go that high, and if it's a form of money as this is, you're actually going to be witnessing it going even higher. All right? The reason why that is when something has existed, like money, in the form of Bitcoin with a blockchain, and it's existed now for like, I think, 10 years, 12 years. We're looking at 2015, but it's existed long enough to break the threshold of that which is not going to disappear. This is not a fad. Okay? So essentially, where would the reactionary society, that is something that you must understand, the humans, the reactionary society as opposed to men and women, as opposed to you out there in YouTube land, where do you think the reactionary people will begin to buy? The people that follow the crowd, the people that like the sense of security of having people around them, the people that will only put out if other people are putting out, those people that would only buy houses when the house prices are going up as opposed to when they're starting to go up. These are the people that will normally determine how far something is going to crash. I remove the word crash, how far something is going to go down. You see, if it's a housing market, and your $100,000 home has gone up by $150,000, that in itself is not going to cause stimulation for the general public to buy. They're going to wait until they believe through the activity of the savvy investor to be able to bring it up to 65-70% more than what it is. So if a $100,000 property begins to go up like $165,000, this is when the general public will jump on the bandwagon. And in doing so, this is when the savvy investor begins to think about when it is time to sell. He'll wait as long as he can. And remember, it takes about 6 months to a year to sell a property. Okay? Or he's going to wait for, are the rental markets going to be increasing? He's going to make these decisions upon that. But what he's not going to do is buy the property when the reactionary market kicks in. When he knows the governments are creating scarcity in housing, he knows that's the marker. You know that. So here, is your marker. Okay, it's been consistent. Bitcoin is learning, people are learning, and the universal curve is now starting to kick in. And it begins to plateau a little bit. These are universal principles of human behavior. That's all that is. I'm not looking at, technically, a Bitcoin chart. I'm looking at a chart of demographics and anthropology. This chart is telling me what people are like and how they are thinking. Okay? So the savvy investor would have already bought it somewhere around here. If they have greater faith, they would have bought it here. All right? For someone like me that is non-reactionary and that wants to transfer the fiat currency into something more faithful, as to willful, which is what they called the US dollar, willful money, in God we trust, as it were, something that is of faithful money, that's all that I'm doing. So myself, I will just try to convert it into Bitcoin, whether it's high and low. That's me. That's me, not you, because you wish to be the savvy one. Okay? So when you know it's round about here and you believe it's going to start going, you know you're going to buy. And that's what I do as well. Sometimes when I've got time to analyze, I'll be looking for these things. Okay? And certainly when it's around about here, I'm not going to buy for the sake of buying, because you don't know whether it's going to start coming down. Okay? You don't know. So what I will do is round about here, when I see these markers, I'll begin to buy. And I will not be selling. Where Bitcoin is concerned, I won't be selling. But if I was savvy, I know round about here, it's starting to fluctuate. It will normally do that. Okay? And there I might think about actually selling if I was a savvy investor. Okay? Period. So let's just paraphrase. Let's paraphrase. The US dollar, which is actually backed by a mineral called oil, is going to become less and less useful, because it's going to be replaced by other power units. As opposed to an internal combustion engine, it's going to be replaced with something of a electrical engine. All right, whether that's a three-phase motor or a two-phase motor, it doesn't really matter. But the conversion of energy is going to be putting oil out of business. So the petroleum way of doing things, from fertilizers to chemical warfare, like Agent Orange and so on and so forth, to fertilizers, pesticides, from internal combustion engine and so on and so forth, they will be becoming less and less needed. Okay? 22 years ago, when the US Navy said we're not going to use oil anymore, we're using another source of energy, the oil market dropped 12% in value, and it never has recovered in that sense. But you see a lot of fluctuation. Okay? So, at the moment, for me, Bitcoin is what I in my mind's eye see, is that Bitcoin, anthropologically, it is giving the ordinary working class men and women to be able to access this coin. Okay? Ordinary men and women, not humans. Humans are highly reactive. Making decisions upon what they will be doing will be always buying high and selling low. They do things in reverse because that's reactionary. All right? Where most of yous will say sorry, the reactionary will be using F-off words. If you bump into somebody, you'll be saying sorry, and vice versa, non-reactionary. But reactionary people, when they bump into people, and if they bump into reactionary people themselves, are going to be swearing at each other and getting into fisticuffs. Okay, that's the consequences, and these people are also participating in this. So what I'm saying to you, the reactionary will always wait for something to react in order to react with. So when Bitcoin looks like, wow, 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 it's really going up, 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 lots of people will jump in and it will go up really even higher. Okay. And when the markets fluctuate, when the markets begin to fluctuate a little bit, they lose faith in it. Hence reactionary. So they always end up buying high and selling low, which is the tragedy of how the stock market works. And it is hard for you to understand, but the stock market itself, with the exception of round about, say, 50, 60 companies, or about half a dozen essential service companies, the rest are just dummy corporations. I think everybody's understood this by now. Because of that, people invest in dummies. And when you invest in dummies, it's all created so the stock market can live off the monies and the commercial energy that everyday people, men and women, humans or whatever it is, live on. The stock market, 80-90% of it is rigged up to remove commercial energy from the ordinary working class man and woman. That's the tragedy of it. And year upon year, decade after decade, okay, and I would like to say century after century, but the stock market is not that old, has always been in that fashion, because human beings have not changed over the millennia. Yeah, men and women do evolve, yes, but by the activity of humans, they can easily fall into thinking like humans as opposed to men and women. All right? So, myself, I know that the prospects of war in the Ukraine means that the military-industrial complex is going to go up in value, because there are very few things on this planet that are more profitable than weaponry. Not armaments. That's an entirely different proposition. Okay, look, we can have, let me see if I can find something identical. Let's imagine these are two identical pens and they're both red as opposed to green. So they look identical and they are identical. By classifying this as a weapon and classifying this as an armament, it performs two different functions. This is in law. A weapon is when a police officer or police constable or whoever it is accuses you of having a weapon. The classification and the definition of a weapon is that you're going to use this to hurt somebody or worst case scenario, kill somebody. An armament is that which you're going to use to protect yourself, defend yourself. This requires no license, and it can be anything. It can be a bow and arrow, a spear, or a tactical nuclear armament. Just by the words of it, this requires, the weapons requires what? License. There's more analogy in this than you can imagine. Now listen, when the prospect of war is happening, you know, I know, and I repeat myself, is that the armament industry, the weaponized industry is going to increase in value, because they're going to be manufacturing and using what they call spent they're going to be discharging those gunpowders. They're going to be discharging it. When you discharge something, what are you doing? You're making it spent. You can't use it again, so it needs to be replaced. So as a result, I know the savvy investors that have little or no morality will be moving their investments, including Bitcoin and various others, into these industries. You, as my subscribers, are governed by morality, are governed by, in fictional world, ethics. Me, I'm not interested in armaments and weapons and so on and so forth. I've got Mustafa to teach me boxing. That's good enough for me. Okay? So you understand the movements of the market. Myself, I see, historically, this is a buying opportunity for me. Now, someone like Lance, who's teaching my Tricks and Traps university students, have got so many systems in place that some of their students tell me they've already made like 7,000. And he only said it to me because I was asking him. But it turns out quite a lot of them has been making a reasonable amount of return. In US dollar, that is. So what I'm saying to you, I don't even use those charts that Lance uses or Hugh uses. I don't use them because I don't have time. All right. What I do is just simply look for the opportunities. That's all. And the opportunity tells me that they're going to be investing in weaponry for the Ukraine, threatening, not necessarily using it, not necessarily going to war, but the threat of war is enough to cause stock market activity because people have no ethics, no morality. They are reactionary. You know the stories. So understanding human nature in that sense, I can see that there is a buying opportunity for me. Let's come back to this analogy. This is what they call, it's like similar to saying an insider information. I'm not an insider. What I am is a man that understands how the world works. Not in its entirety. But I do know the dice that I'm throwing is heavily loaded. And I also know that the dice that I'm throwing has 6 faces. And I know that I am throwing 2 dice at a time. So the probability waves of that is going to be consistent, even though the dice is loaded against me. You understand what I'm saying? These things are always loaded against humans. Men and women that allow themselves to be vulnerable and think of themselves, well, look, I'm a bit stupid when it comes to the stock market, and they admit it. So therefore, what do? They educate themselves. The humans, of course, never do. They're experts in everything. Full stop. Now watch this. What backs, by the way, these are 2 identical pens, all right? Or pretend they're identical. One is running out, one is still full. Look at this pen, 2 pens. I've given you the analogy of armaments and weaponry, which in itself is an incredible insight, taught to me by David Wayne Miller. Now, ask yourself this question. This is the US dollar. This is Bitcoin. US dollar can buy you a loaf of bread. Bitcoin can buy you a loaf of bread. US dollar can buy you an armament or a weapon. Bitcoin buy you a weapon or a armament. What do you think most people are using Bitcoin for? When I say most people, I'm talking about 99.999% of people on the planet. What do you think they are using Bitcoin for? They're using it, first of all, as a way of transferring and converting US dollars into Bitcoin. And they're also using it not to make war. Not to make war. They're not using it for weaponry or armaments. They're using it as a way to keep a store of value and transfer it to their children, and if need be, to buy a loaf of bread with it. That's what they're doing. In the world of blockchain, public ledgers, when you buy something, it has to go through a public ledger, a public key, which shows up to the entire world. So when you buy a weapon without a license, you've just failed with Bitcoin. Sorry, everybody will know what you're up to. What I'm saying to you, the conversion of US dollar and other fiat currency or central bank notes are literally converting themselves to a peaceful means of coinage. That is a bit of a coin called Bitcoin. You understand what I'm saying to you? Bitcoin is one of the number one tools, more effective than any peace protester or peace convoy, is the number one tool rigged up by its millions of percent, what they call leverage, to be the most peaceful currency, in wanting for a better word, store of value than any other on this planet. Whether you are human, whether you are this or that, or men and women, remember each word opens up a contract. Each word has a completely different meaning. No, that's why no police officer is ever going to say, well, how dare you have this big magnum armament under your coat? Because if he did, he can't press any charges. But he'll say, wow, you got a big weapon there, big magnum. And then, of course, he's just made an accusation which sticks to say you're going to use it to hurt somebody. So he doesn't need your permission to take you in. But if you tell him it's an armament and stick to it, something else. If he sees intention for anything other than an armament, he has authorization to slap you around the head, put handcuffs to you, and take you in. Don't think they are stupid. Okay, so can you see why I am converting all of my willful money? Let me see if I got some willful money here. I'm always forgetting to put some, props up. This is willful money. I normally have other currencies hanging around here, like $1 bills and things, but I can't find it. There's too much paperwork on my desk. That's willful money. I have converted that willful money into faithful money called Bitcoin. That Bitcoin, as well as being able to use for everyday purchases, there's nothing wrong with that, as well as a store of value for your grandchildren and grandchildren, as it were, is one of the most safest tools by its very operation. This is why the Olympians have essentially given in to the power of what this coin really is. Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen, as well as being the best money making opportunity that I've ever had, is also correctly and in parallel with my faith. That is, in negative expression, cause no harm to no one else. Be of service. Better the earth. Yes, you will have, a lot of people trying to stop you, and you will have challenges. But once you enter that game, as our forefathers had done so successfully, that has been hidden from you, they were successful. Yeah. You can see that this is in line, the world becoming more peaceful. This is in line, it's going to be in line with the Shanghai cooperation. This is in line with blockchain, with Bitcoin, in line with all the banks shutting down because they offer no service. Yes, they will come up with creative ways to keep themselves afloat, but they will be like they were, say, in Nigeria, the banks, 40 years ago. The people that made the deposits there knew that's their money and would treat the workers there, especially the bank manager, as the imbecile, puny that he really is. Whereas in this time and age, they're talking to you as if they are gods, because they're in control of your money, known as know your customer. In other words, they can take custody of your money. Whether you are man or woman, whether you are human, or anything else you call yourself, we know most people, about 80%, want peace, as opposed to 20% that will want opportunities to make money at any cost. Immoral people, as it were. This is why I believe, and that is why I have so much faith, that this Bitcoin, as it were, is going to be the solution to the ills that you have been experiencing. This is more than money, ladies and gentlemen. It is more than money. You can see that now, can't you? The analogy that I have drawn is that which is armament and that which is weaponry. Bitcoin, I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, will never be part of any weaponry. Yeah? And the need to even arm yourself with Bitcoin or use armaments to protect your Bitcoin will become null and void, because blockchain allows that level of security. This is completely in line with also the conversion that is taking place of corporate to cooperatives, which are also decentralized. You see, when an invader, whether that be a computer, ideological invaders, religious invaders, financial invaders, or physical invaders like warring factions, when they take something over, if it's centralized, you can take that over the moment you make that conquering and make it work for you as the tyrannical invader that they are. When you have a starfish organization, which means there isn't one central government, but there are as many governments as there are communities within that infrastructure, within that so-called country, you have to invade every single one and capture every single one of those governments. If I wanted to capture Washington, D.C., I just have to do an aggressive takeover bid. Because Washington, D.C. is what? It's a corporate. If it was a starfish organization made up of thousands of autonomous organizations that are all working together for the benefit of the Americans as opposed to United States, full stop, it's a lot harder to take over. Because they can split any which way they can. They can go into space, they can go underground, they can catch a train, catch an airplane, they can share it amongst themselves, and the government will still run. This is what's happening in front of your face. That's why the Tricks and Traps University students will be in a fantastic position to meet that head on. Yeah. These conduits were put in there for beneficiary reasons, not as means for weaponry and even having the need to arm yourself. Okay? So you understand the principles of buy low and sell high now. There is no insights into it. The real insight is armaments and weaponry and the conversion of willful money into Bitcoin. Because you know that every central bank throughout the world that was in control of the money supply, like the Federal Reserve, was using it to cause conflict after conflict in order to secure their money. So hence every politician, I think, basically knows the only thing that keeps the US dollar and the pound and the euro in float, as it were, is through weaponry. If you don't use our US dollar and you use any other currency, we'll invade you and impose the petroleum dollar on you. Think you guys understand? You as subscribers, and I'm speaking to you, my subscribers here, and my students, direct and indirect. Listen very carefully. The insights that I shared with you, if it was spread all over the world, I'm not quite sure if everybody would understand it like you do, the subscribers, who have a history with me. And I say this for one reason. You look out the window, you subscribers, and about 5% or less of the world's population can see chemical engineering being sprayed out of airplanes, even though it's been happening in an incredible amount in the last 25 years. To the point where one would even be considered deaf, dumb, and blind to be able to not to see it. What does that tell you? That the other 95% of the world's population are in. They cannot see geoengineering taking place. You understand what I'm saying to you? They can't see it. So in that sense, we know that in the kingdom of the blind, the man with one eye is the king. And what I'm saying to you, on a geometric level playing field, there's nothing special about us. It's just that we are able to see something that they are totally blind to. Totally blind to. So now you decide on how many people can actually see what Bitcoin is or what I have just described. Remember, you subscribers, you listening to this, you know it already. So it's not a big visional change. It's not a big vision change. It's not a big spectrum change. But for others, it's like giving them sight where no sight was. Yeah. Look, as a planetary judge, the reason why I spend so much time, energy, and money explaining these things to you is because you know the Egyptian tale of Horus, yeah, and I think it's Hades. If I got my mythology correct, if I have not, please forgive me. But Horus, of course, is the falcon, yeah, that has that fantastic vision, that fantastic vision to be able to see a panoramic understanding, a panoramic view of how the world works. You know, when we have an aerial shot, you get to see so many different things. Just as when you have being able to understand the specific laws of relativity, as opposed to the general laws of relativity, it gives you a wonderful perspective to hold an ear of wheat and look it up in detail with a microscope or a magnifying glass, and then being able to pull up and seeing the field of wheat and the cities and so on and so forth, the industry, the infrastructure, gives you a wonderful vision into the Pacific and into the general, even though I am no fan of Einstein. You see, in that sense, as a planetary judge, that's my job. Like Horus, that goes into the depths of hell, into the depths of darkness, where the creatures there, not creatures, the beings there that lack sunlight, the beings there that lack any energy, that have lost their vision, and Horus plucks out, as it were, one of his own eyes and sticks it into, I think it's Hades. I've forgotten my mythology, I do beg your pardon. But he sacrifices one of his own eyes and goes into the depths of hell, into darkness itself, and to his fellow man, as it were, who's lost in darkness, gives him vision. And in doing so, he sets free everything in there that he touches. That's what David Wayne Miller did with the language. And that's what I do. I give man the vision back. Yeah, I give him the way out, the solutions. I did not create Bitcoin. I did not create any of these things. The people that created the means by which to exist, the Bitcoin, is what they're doing. They're giving you vision. They're giving you the tools and the mechanisms to come out of it. Come out of this dark ages, which the Olympians have kept you in. All of their names, all can be found on my website. Okay. Willful money, as in last will and testament, is being converted into faithful money to meet all those things which I have just spoken about. This is why I am 100% in Bitcoin. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope I have explained to you the fundamentals. I hope I have explained to you the power of a decentralized organization and the monies to back it up. Thank you very much. And I am very, very grateful that I have got so many people now following me, 75,000, and it's growing every day by the hundreds. Thank you very much for that. You know, I want to share something with you. As a child, I come from a world of pain, but I wanted to convert it into something meaningful. And it grieves me. It grieves me that a organization like the bankers, who have names and addresses, are so pernicious enough they were able to blind you in buying a death pledge. That grieves me. That puts me in such a position to say, if you can do it to me, and you did it to my brother, and you did it to all those people, I know that's how stupid I once was. That a banker can so willfully sell a death pledge to so many hundreds of millions of people. That causes a stirring in me. A very strong feeling emerges. That which is correct is correct. That which is right is right. That which is wrong is wrong. And no amount of colouring of the law will be able to will enable you to walk away with this.